This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Mac and Jack and Doc and maybe Pags Saturday debate show. 1 hour of great baseball, football, basketball, sports talk. And, I feel like Peyton Manning this morning. I'm looking at the offense. I'm looking at the defense. I see the players I have. And I got a play sent in by the head coach, and that's Mac, of course. Mac is the head coach. And he sent in the play, and he's got everything ready to go. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking out on the field, and I'm going to call an audible. I have to. I'm calling Omaha. Before the show, in the long pre-production meetings that we have that last hours and hours, we've been going at this, I think, since about 3 a.m., just making sure that this show is the best show possible. It hasn't been since 3 a.m. It's really been since, 7:45. But anyway, we started getting into a big discussion. And the discussion really began with Monument Park and the Yankees and who deserves to be in Monument Park and how do you choose who goes in there. I wrote a piece about that on Start Spreading the News the other day. No one really knows how people get in there, but the idea is the Yankees should make the process more transparent and open it up to players who deserve to be there who aren't there. But we've talked about that before. But then Jack came up with this idea about how Hall of Fames over time see their the quality of the players, by and large, dwindle. You might look at a guy like Harold Baines in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Certainly a very, very, very good player. Maybe not an all-time great. And Jack said we ought to have a Super Hall of Fame. Every year, one player who's in the Hall of Fame gets elevated to like the immortal class, that they go in the Super Hall of Fame. And there was general consensus among all of us that the first player to go in there would be Babe Ruth. Then we started debating who would be the second player to go in there. And then the subject of Cy Young came up because Jack said you have to put pitchers in there too because we weren't mentioning pitchers. And I said Cy Young, he's got 511 wins. Jack started talking about Cy Young and his 511 wins. And then I had to cut off the conversation because we had to get the show on. So we were going at it. It was great discussion, and we're going to pick up right there. So let's start with the idea of the Super Hall of Fame. The first guy who gets in is Babe Ruth. Who's the second guy?
That is such a great question, guys. And I know who you mentioned before the show, and pardon me, for mentioning the name. Jackie Robinson conceivably would be the second guy, and that would be a complete farce. A complete farce. I respect what he's meant to society. And I respect what he had to go through. Jackie Robinson was a great man, an outstanding player. But with talking about what the guy did on the ball field strictly, nothing to do with society for the next guy who should get in. And how could you elevate a Jackie Robinson over a Willie Mays, for example, over Hank Aaron? I mean, you just can't do something like that. But I think if you have a Super Hall of Fame, there would be talk, well, what did Jackie Robinson mean to the spirit of the game of baseball? And perhaps more so than any other player, I respect that intangible, but it's got to be confined to what the player has done on the field. And if we talk about the Super Hall of Fame, guys, we should allow only one player to go in a year. So after the first 10 years, only have 10 guys in there. It should be the absolute cream of the crop. It should have to do only with the all-time greats. You're talking about DiMaggio, Gehrig, Mays, Aaron. Who should go in after the Babe? You tell me.
All right. So, before the show, I surmised that if they ever did this, the second guy to get in would be Jackie Robinson. I think Jackie's impact on the game, and this is what we were discussing beforehand, what was so tremendous. He changed the game, and I think his impact on the game will elevate his stature as a player and as a person who impacted the game, to be redundant, to the level that makes him more of a person who would be inducted than other greats like Willie Mays or Hank Aaron or Mickey Mantle or Joe DiMaggio or Lou Gehrig or Ty Cobb or Cy Young.
Well, I think first we would have to. You say super. What's the criteria? I mean, is Jack mentioned? Should we put pitchers in there? Are we going to put in players from separate teams to make it more fair? Are we going to put 3 Yankees in first before we put anybody else in first? So I mean, it's a hard question to talk to really answer. I think if you're going to go historically, the second person would have to be Lou Gehrig, right? I mean, he's the Iron Horse. He's the guy that hit second to home runs. He was, he was second to Ruth in almost everything. RBIs, played first base for how many games? I mean, if you're going to go historically, if you're not, then you've got a lot of people you can talk about. You got Stan the Man Musial. I mean, you've got a bunch of players that would be in this Super Hall of Fame. You got to do more than one a year, though, Jack. You can't just do one.
Then it makes no sense. You have the Hall of Fame already, Matt.
Well,
you have the Hall of Fame, and it makes no sense. It's the same thing.
To do one a year, Jack, we would all be dead by the time we got to number 40. For God's sake, I mean,
you're keeping the numbers down. That's
I understand.
All there is. That's the whole idea.
I understand what you're saying. Why don't we put the top 10 we would think in all at once and then go from there?
Because that's what's wrong with the Hall of Fame today. That's why all Hall of Fames in sports are diluted. Too many guys all getting in.
You don't think in the history of baseball there's enough players to put 10 in the first year and keep going? I mean, they go.
You have that now, Mac, but you have it now. You're talking about having something you have at the current time, so just leave it as is.
If you go back to 20? When is 1970? Whenever it started, I mean, you're talking 100 and something years of baseball players.
So let's leave things alone, Mac. Let's leave it alone. You get no argument from me. Leave it alone. I'm thinking of something exactly brand new to have. And you're talking about something we have right now, which is fine. So let's just leave it as is. A whole bunch of guys are getting in. You have that in Rings of Honor. You have that in Team Hall. Team Hall of Fames are different because Team Hall of Fames honor the very good players. For example, the Mets recently had their Hall of Fame induction. They had Howard Johnson getting in and Al Leiter. Neither guy is going to make it to Cooperstown. Okay, even though Leiter had some great moments, especially with the Miami Marlins, 7th game World Series. But Hojo, for example, Team Hall of Fames are perfect for a guy like that.
Are we gonna base it off being famous too? Or are we strictly staying on the field?
Well, I think we should strictly stay on the field. Once you start going off the field, it's another matter. The one name that comes up off the field, maybe the only name, is Jackie Robinson. We know what he's meant to baseball.
Maybe Clemente.
And all, but it starts becoming a little political, I hate to say. And I have enormous respect for Jackie Robinson.
Well, I think you could put Clemente in. You could put Clemente in that discussion.
Clemente was a greater player than Jackie Robinson. Okay, if you put in a Jackie Robinson, what about a Ricky Henderson? He wouldn't make it, but he was a great player and was marginally better than Jackie Robinson as well on the field. Okay, and there's so many great guys who would never make it into a Super Hall of Fame. Take a Tony Gwynn, for example, a Rod Carew. Yeah, they might make it after 50 years.
Well, if you're gonna count off field, if you do, and you're gonna count the good things, you're gonna count the bad things too. I mean, are you gonna count what kind of person this guy was off the field or on the field as
That's a great question, Mac, because if the guy, for example, was an all-time great and he was alive and then commits a murder, for example, wow. I mean, how do you get him in as the 7th guy? I'm just giving an example, throwing a number out there. I see the point, which I think is going to lead into one of our debate questions later, so I'm not going to touch it right now.
It is, huh? Let me see. Which one are we going to talk about? I don't know if it leads into one of the questions that I have here.
As far as the question that Mac proposed, should leagues be involved in discipline?
Oh, the discipline. Yes. Good.
Right.
Fair point. Yes. Yeah, I was thinking Hall of Fame. All right, so let's just ask real quick. We're just going to do number 1. Do we all agree in the Baseball Hall of Fame? If we had a Super Hall of Fame, the first guy to go in is Babe Ruth.
Easy.
A toss-up maybe between him and Ty Cobb, maybe.
Interesting. All right.
A toss-up, Matt?
Maybe,
Really?
maybe,
A toss-up?
maybe. Different hitters, but both very, very effective. Both.
So you might actually, since it's a toss-up, you might give the edge to Ty Cobb, maybe. You'll sit down, think it, because a toss-up means you could go either way.
I think
so you might give an edge Cobb. Okay.
I think
Ty Cobb actually had more votes than Babe Ruth, I believe, in the initial Hall of Fame election.
Babe got what, 94% of the votes or something? So
I have to look this all up, but Ty Cobb, I believe, did better.
Choice. Why are we even dignifying that? Babe wasn't even a unanimous choice. The only unanimous choice was Mariano Rivera. So think of all the legends, DiMaggio, Gehrig, the Babe. They won a unanimous choice. That's absurd. So why are we even dignifying these idiots who didn't vote for them?
All right, so football. Give me a quick name because we want to get to the regular questions. Football.
Oh, that's
the first
tough.
Guy to go in.
That's tough. I know. Doc's going to say Brady. Jack might say Joe Namath.
I don't know. I don't know what I say.
I don't know what I'd say. I'd have to go with Jim Brown, right? Maybe the greatest football player of all time.
All right, Jim Brown, and I would consider Brady, but when you think about the magnitude and the history of the sport, we tend to elevate the players who were legends for a longer period of time, sometimes above the guys of today. If you could only choose between Jim Brown and Johnny Unitas, those would probably be my other two big choices. Who would you pick?
I'd probably pick Jim Brown. But, what bothered me about Jim Brown is this, and Mac's not going to like to hear this. He didn't play like the complete player. He didn't block. He rebelled against the coach. He didn't want to block. It was beneath him to block. And after he retired, he said he regretted it. He would block tenaciously if he had a chance to do it over again. So the bottom line is, as great a running back as he was, and you could make the argument, certainly he was the greatest pure running back of all time, blocking is a part of it. It was during the time he played, and he refused to do it. It was like asking Reggie to bunt, asking Jim Brown to block. He had that attitude about it.
I think maybe if you're going to go with legends of all time, this may sound a little funny, but if you are, you'd have to probably maybe put Red Grange or somebody like that in there, or Jim Thorpe, Jim Thorpe was founded, but Thorpe was great in a lot of different things, but Red Grange might be one that you might consider even before Jimmy Brown.
Well, guys, you mentioned names like Red Grange, guys, Otto Graham. That's the Hank Bauer syndrome. People today don't realize the type of player Hank Bauer was because, people passed on when a different generation. And that's what you have. Football did exist before the Super Bowl. I don't know what my answer would be. The older I get, I'm coming to the conclusion there's nothing wrong with admitting I don't know. There's a lot I don't know, and I just can't give an answer to a lot of questions because I don't know.
All right, so basketball, I'd go with MJ, Michael Jordan.
I don't think so.
You're going to say Bill Russell?
You could say Bill Russell. You could say
Will
Oscar Gamble. Oscar Robinson. Oscar Gamble was a pretty good baseball player, but Oscar Robinson you could put in that conversation. How far back again do you go? Do you go to the beginning?
You can't go wrong with Jordan. I saw Bill Russell play. He couldn't score. He wasn't a scorer.
I don't think
he wasn't a threat
I think he could have. I think he could have if he wanted to. I don't think he really wanted to. That wasn't their way they won the games. They won the games by him running the offense basically as a center. He's one of the first centers really that was a point center in the NBA. He assists and rebounds was his big thing. I know he put up some big numbers when he had to. I know he did that, but he didn't have to with that Celtics team. So, he was, we talk about point centers today, and maybe Bill Russell was the first.
Last one, hockey, Gordie Howe or Wayne Gretzky?
Gordie Howe, easy. That's not even
a question. Bobby Orr?
I was thinking that would be the third guy.
That would be a tough one, too.
I'd go Gretzky.
Our goalies concluded? Like pitchers, our goalies included?
Sure.
I'd go Gordie Howe with his longevity, his toughness, and all that. And keep this in mind. Wayne Gretzky had a great supporting cast when he won the Cups at Edmonton. And then when he left a couple of years later, Edmonton won the Cup without him. He never won a Stanley Cup after leaving. I'm not going to argue if you say Wayne Gretzky. Don't misunderstand me, but I don't think it's an automatic. People hear hockey, oh, it's Wayne Gretzky automatically.
Interesting. All right, so good audible. I think I just marched the team down the field, and I scored a touchdown and made the 2-point conversion. So we are up early in the game, looking to make this a rout. So our first question is really about broadcasting. ESPN, Disney, of course, are they doing what basically the MLB is presently doing by getting rid of expensive star commentators and bringing in less expensive, unknown sports commentators? Are they copying MLB, or is this just the economics and the fact that there are so many competitors? What do you think? What's going on there? Why is ESPN laying off people? And
I'm missing something here. Who's Major League Baseball letting go? I don't understand.
Well, teams, Jack. Teams that are teams that are letting these other players become free agents. You see what Tampa Bay has done.
Broadcasters, Mac.
Right. Well, the same idea, right? I mean, you've got Stephen A. Smith, who's scared to lose his job. That would be probably the highest free agent out there right now, the most expensive free agent. That the younger teams now are letting these types of players go, and they're bringing in the youth, and they're being successful. I don't know if ESPN is going to be successful with this or not. I think ESPN has grown so big that they have to cut people.
But the question's broadcasters. Major League Baseball isn't letting broadcasters go. What teams?
No, Jack. He's making the comparison that certain teams have made the decision to forego the superstar. Is ESPN sort of following that same model? They're foregoing the superstar and bringing in lesser talents because maybe they feel they could generate more money and have a better product if they went with different talent. It's an interesting question because some of the old time talent, I remember, like Chris Berman, he was there when ESPN started and back. And that had a place. As ESPN, when it really blossomed and became big, it was sort of out of place at that point. Like it was neat for a small town thing. I don't think it worked as much for a big time mega media. It seemed just a little bit, I don't know, like cheap. Like, yeah, this is what we did on the way up, but now that we're big, we have to have a different type of look. And ESPN's had a lot of cuts. A lot of people are being let go. And is this a good business strategy? Are they trying? Why are they doing it? And is it a good thing? I think that's really the
I think it has to do with ethnic groups to an extent. Okay, an example. Let's say Phil Rizzuto was still broadcasting today. I don't know how many Yankee fans would enjoy hearing about him saying he had a big bowl of pasta last night, the tomato sauce from this place he got it from. That went over well with the audiences he had for a while, but we kind of move on in a sense. And, and broadcasters, sometimes they appeal to certain ethnic groups. It's just the way it is. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But but I think sponsors look that way with what they have and what they're getting in return. I don't know. It's an odd thing because society does evolve. It evolves in different ways, and that's not a bad thing.
I think Phil Rizzuto will be great today. I don't know what you're talking about, Jack. I don't know what you're talking about.
A young fan. Who cares? Mac. Phil Rizzuto really?
Well, who cares about all that? He was an exciting announcer. I used to love to listen to Phil Rizzuto more than I like listening to Sterling or Kay, to be honest with you. I mean, he knows a little bit more about the game than they do. He knew the players. He had it in. I mean, and he was exciting. I don't know what you're talking about with Italian and all. I have no.
I was talking about Phil Rizzuto joking around. I didn't mention any particular ethnic groups. Don't put words in my
Spaghetti sauce. I mean, it's pretty obvious what you're talking about.
know, but that way he would be talking and joking around, and that was great, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it a lot. It was good stuff.
I think
But
so.
I'm saying the young fan of today, I don't know, with the different ethnic groups, might not get as much of a kick out of Phil Rizzuto or enjoy him and like listening to him as much as I did when I was younger, for example.
What do
Well,
you think?
I think you make a point that, and I was basically making a different point, but the similar idea that, certain broadcasters over time, it becomes less of what, the quality of what they're doing, and it becomes sort of like kitsch, right? It becomes like they become a caricature of what they used to be. And certain people play well with their audiences of the time, and then those audiences do change. So even if you were to look back and listen to a broadcast of some of the great games in baseball history, you might listen to Red Barber or Mel Allen call a game. And I don't know if that type of approach would be as successful today. People might not like listening to that type of approach. I just watched about 2 or 3 weeks ago Kirk Gibson's home run in the, what was it, at the 88 World Series. And the thing that struck me the most is the exact opposite of what you get today. Today, when something big happens, like when Aaron Judge, and I'm not criticizing or critiquing Michael Kay, but when Aaron Judge hit number 62, there was a lot of verbiage spewed on the broadcast. 62 and number 99 beats number 9. And, there was just a lot of, he did it. It was this many minutes and look at how, and here we are. And here's his mom and here's his dad and here's his nephew and here's Roger Maris's family. And I kept that's what they did. There was a lot of talk and it kept going on and on and on. When Kirk Gibson hit the home run, there was no sound. That was Vin Scully. The home run, he trots around the bases. Everything's going crazy, and it's probably minutes before he says something, whatever he said. I can't believe what I just saw, or whatever his quote was at the moment. But that comes so much later. So broadcasting does change. Like certain approaches that work in one era don't necessarily work in another era. So I think ESPN is a business, and I think they're trying to save money, and so they're realizing that the big talents.
The biggest problem is that the announcers, as you just said, and I think people are tired of it. They think they're more the star than the sport it is. I mean, you look at people like Tony Romo or some of these announcers on baseball. They're more concerned about how they sound, what they look like if you're on TV, all that stuff, rather than the game itself. I think that's taken away from it.
All right, I think we're getting some feedback.
I think Jack,
could you mute your mic for a minute? Yeah, so Jack, there's some feedback on your end there. So I don't know what it is.
Yeah, close the window, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. There was something in the background. So I think Mac, you were making the point that the personalities think they're bigger than the game. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to the announcers, if you watch ESPN, which I do once in a while, it's more about their quips and their little sayings than it is about the player itself. In fact, they talked about Wembanyama like he had a good game yesterday in the summer league. He scored 9 points, but they're like, "Well, he's just learning, and he got 5 blocks. Good first game for him." It wasn't a good first game. He sold out. The whole thing sold out to watch him play, and he scored 4 points. So the story sometimes is before the event even happens. Instead of saying, the guy, being honest, saying the guy has a lot to learn before he plays in the NBA, and he probably wouldn't be good right now if he played in the NBA, they're making it sound bigger than what he is right now. Right now, he's just a young kid trying to figure things out here in the NBA. In the summer league against other rookies that look better than he looked right now. So, I mean, I think the story is set ahead of time. So, anyway. You're muted.
Jack, I think there's some feedback issues on your end. So when you're talking, turn it on, and I guess when you're not, put the mute on. But anyway, what do you think, Jack?
I have mixed feelings on these announcers. I mean, we're there to hear what they have to say. I mean, do you really expect them to be quiet the whole time? I mean, Russ Hodges' famous call of the 51 playoff game, the Giants win the pennant, the Giants win the pennant, the Giants win the pennant, and I was watching Don Lawson's Perfect Game, a replay the other day, and the great Vince Scully, who to me was the greatest baseball broadcaster of all time. I mean, what a pleasure it was to listen to him describe the game. It's a lot better than not having anyone say anything at all. And they're there to talk. They're there to entertain. You don't want them to really go so overboard either. I think people don't like announcers who are a bit bold. I don't mind them. Mac mentioned Tony Romo, but Romo's there because of his enthusiasm. He was offered an extra good contract. You want to feel when you're listening to a broadcaster like you're at the game with him. You're sitting there, you're watching the game, like he's next to you. You're hanging out with him.
Yeah,
you want to get that feeling. Listen, like the Yankee broadcasters. Paul O'Neill strikes me as a nice guy, good person, obviously a heck of a player. He's not my favorite broadcaster. He's so darn serious. The whole time. David Cohn's a lot looser. I feel I could sit next to David Cohn at a game and joke around about something a little more. It's just the feeling you get, with certain broadcasters.
Yeah, but I think as you said Giants win the bench. That was at the end of the game anyway. But beside the point, I think the job of the broadcasters is to break down a game, use the knowledge. Listen, Tony Romo, I'm not saying he's a bad broadcaster, Jack. He's very knowledgeable of what he says. I mean, that's why he's there. But sometimes they just talk too much. Sometimes, as Doc said with the Russell home run or Gibson home run, that sometimes it's just better to let this. When somebody throws a touchdown, you don't have to go on about the play and show me 10 different replays of it before we even kick the field goal. We saw what happened, describe what happened, and let's get going. I mean, it's fine to have somebody recapping something, but don't go overboard is all I'm saying.
I want announcers to be critical when it's called upon. About 10 days ago, approximately, Anthony Rizzo hits a ball that he thinks is going to be a home run. He's very slow out of the batter's box, okay? And he winds up, I think he winds up at first base, on it. Or the ball went off the wall and he should have been at third base. I forgot which of the two, but I remember thinking, what the heck, he wasn't hustling. He wasn't running hard at all. But Michael Kay and whoever was with him in the booth didn't criticize Anthony Rizzo, didn't even mention it. Because it's Anthony Rizzo, arguably the most respected Yankee leader in that clubhouse. Everyone respects Anthony Rizzo. We know his pedigree. But if he screwed up, mention it. That's inexcusable. You say it, but they're reluctant to say it because they work for the team. They don't want to stir things up.
I agree with that, Jack. I definitely agree with that.
I came up with what I think is a brilliant idea a long time ago, and I believe we have the technology to make this happen. Tell me what you think about this idea. You ever watch the game and they say if you push the SAP button, you can hear the feed in Spanish, right? They mentioned that you could do it that way. That's been around for a decade or more. But if you can have a different audio feed come in through your video feed, why can't they give fans the opportunity to actually listen to the game the way they want to? And you could have different audio feeds that you choose from when the game goes on. You could choose your hometown announcer. Oh, let me hear what Michael Kay has to say. Or you can choose the away team's announcer. Or you could choose no announcer and you just hear ballpark sounds.
The Major League Baseball package has that, Doc.
Do they really?
Yeah, they have the two teams. Yeah,
but separate, so you can just hear them.
Right. They have
they copied
all the games. Like the Yankees are playing the Toronto Blue Jays. You could get the Toronto Blue Jay broadcast team, and you could get the Yankee, for example.
Oh, see that? I'm ahead of my time. I made that
Well,
up years ago, and I'm behind my time because I didn't know what was happening.
there was an NFL game that happened with. I mean, maybe Jack remembers it too. I think
Yeah, I
it
think
was
in the late
a,
70s with no
yes,
announcer.
no announcer. And they played the game without an announcer trying to save some money. I think they were trying to do there. But I guess to have something like that, Doc, I think you'd have to be there, right? I think you'd have to be there to enjoy that. It's hard to enjoy a game with no announcers when you're not at the game itself. I think so. That's why I don't think it went over well with the NFL.
All right, let's get to the next thing because Jack was sort of referring to this earlier. Here is the question: is it finally time for sports teams to stop punishing players for accused crimes and convictions and let the legal system punish the players as citizens? That's the question. Jack, you seem to have some thoughts on that as we open the
Yeah,
show. So.
Jack doesn't know what the answer is. I mean, when I think I know what the answer is, I see I don't. A case in point is going to be, let's say O.J. Simpson was the running back for the New York Jets. I'm a Jets fan. He's acquitted legally by the system. I might not be a Jet fan anymore. The heck with it. I'm not going to root for them that year. So you have a fan base to consider, okay? If you're a team owner, you have sponsors to consider. You have the whole thing to consider. But with that said, there is a legal system. If someone is found not guilty of certain things, innocent until proven guilty, they should be allowed to pursue, their profession in most cases, but not in all cases. Doc, you understand being a principal of a school. Let's say someone is accused of, something in regard to the kids. I don't want to get into anything deeply. You can't have them in the classroom while they're under suspicion at that moment, teaching, but so it's a gray area. It's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but I'm not sure. There's so many other factors involved. I mean, I would rather the legal system play out. That's always the safest way. And a lot of times someone is innocent and then they get acquitted and you're putting them on the sideline just because someone had an agenda and accused them as well. But there's so many variables involved. I don't know the answer, guys, at this point.
Yeah, I'll just say I think both can happen, right? Like I think you made the comparison between a school, but I don't think it's any difference in a business. I don't think guys necessarily get fired but they can face suspensions in the workplace or being moved to a different department or something like that if depending on what happened. But while that's happening and the investigation is going on, you don't necessarily want that person in certain situations. And then the business has the right to say, the team or whatever, this guy violated this rule or we didn't appreciate this conduct. And then there's another level that says what the legal system says. And the legal system then can enact through the legal system whatever consequences are determined appropriate at the time based upon the evidence. They're two different things, right? So a team could say, we don't approve of that and we don't necessarily want you on our team representing our club. Another team might say, sure, we'll have you. I mean, that's sort of what happened with the Aroldis Chapman, right? He had the Reds basically said, we don't want you. And the Yankees said, yeah, we'll take you. And then that while that was happening, he faced a suspension from the sport. And I assume there were legal proceedings that took place eventually at some time. To be honest, I don't necessarily follow all that because it's, I don't take any enjoyment from following all that kind of stuff. My enjoyment comes from watching the game and rooting for my team. So, but I think they both can happen simultaneously. No.
Let me just say something. Matt Araiza, let's get specific. The Buffalo Bills drafted him a punter in the 6th round. He was accused of rape. Okay, he said he was 100% innocent. They had a big investigation, the police, and they found he wasn't at the scene. He wasn't guilty after all. So what he said rang true. Yet the Bills cut him as soon as the accusation came in because they're concerned about the women's groups. Well, the Bills should have said to the women's groups, he says he's innocent. let a court of law decide this. What are they scared about? Women's groups are going to pick it. An innocent guy. And now he can't get a tryout in the NFL because they just don't feel like dealing with it, even though like all evidence, pointed to him being innocent and he was cleared by, all criminal charges.
Yeah, I think that's a case where you're right. Like, it looks as though, and again, I don't know all the facts, so I can't speak to it specifically, but based upon what I've read, it seems like he is innocent. And so I would think there needs to be some sort of chance for him then to get back to the Bills, right? It seems like they got rid of him unjustifiably, and he must have some sort of legal avenue in order to pursue being let go unfairly. And you talked about in the school, what would happen would be a teacher would be suspended with pay. So you wouldn't be in the classroom, but you would be still getting paid. And then if you came innocent, you'd have your job back. So maybe the Bills and sports need to do something like that. He's proven innocent. He should have a chance to have his job back.
Well, let me give you a question on that, Doc, before I push on to what Jack's talking about. Would that teacher want that job back in that situation where he's been accused? Because they're going to say, well, if where there's smoke, there's fire. This is what people are going to say. So would he really want to come back and teach in that classroom with all those accusations that were there? The kids, the parents, his reputation is ruined. So would he really even want to come back to teaching in that position in your school?
That's a different question entirely, but yeah, that could be. I mean, there's other things that play into that equation, right? How many more years till you retire? What about your pension, et cetera? Maybe there's another position within a school district or within a school that the person could go to, or within a business or whatever.
So without him doing anything, so that's what we're saying. Without him doing anything, he still gets punished. It depends in sports on how big a star it is. Me and Jack talked about this. Deshaun Watson, right? They signed him with all those things coming on. Pick it all you want. They didn't care. So if it's a punter compared to a star quarterback, the punter gets the short end of the stick. And then when you got people that are actually involved in crimes, Ray Lewis, they didn't say he killed the guy, but he definitely was there when the guy was shot. That's proven. But yet he gets a big job. He plays for the Ravens, and he gets a big job as a broadcaster. In fact, I still think he is broadcasting. So this is what's not, I don't know if you'll call it fair or not. This is why I think the sports teams, the NFL, the MLB, the NBA, stay the heck out of punishing people until he's found guilty. And then do what you got to do. Then you fire him. Or if he's acquitted, he's still on your team. That would be making it a lot easier for these guys to make a living and to clear their names. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what you're going to suspend a guy that's not guilty, or you're going to keep on a guy that is guilty. Let the legal process handle the legal affairs. That's not what they're there for.
The case of Colin Kaepernick taking the knee, that's no crime, okay, in any way, shape, or form. But it offended a lot of people. And at the time Colin Kaepernick started taking a knee, his career was kind of a little bit on a downward spiral. He at best was a fringe starting quarterback, probably more like a number 2, a backup. But if that was Patrick Mahomes, do you think the Chiefs would have cut him? Do you think Patrick Mahomes would have any trouble getting a job? The Chiefs probably would have said, well, we don't agree with Patrick, but he's entitled to do what he believes in. So we support his right to do so and so, even though we don't necessarily agree with the action. That's the statement I'm speculating they would have made. But Patrick Mahomes would be playing, like you said, Mac, with Deshaun Watson. Okay? I mean, Deshaun Watson should be playing football. Okay? Yeah. I mean, there were no criminal charges put against him. He settled his civil cases. Deshaun Watson obviously did some things that were improper, but it cost him financially, and his career was set back a while. So it wasn't like nothing happened in that regard. But the point is that had he been a borderline player, he probably wouldn't have a job. And that's what, annoying. And how much should the league step in? That's, I think, the question. is it really the commissioner's position? Like Jay Morant got suspended for 25 games from the Memphis Grizzlies. Technically, he didn't break a law. Should the NBA be stepping in and suspending him because he was, foolish enough to have a picture taken of himself holding a gun, for the second time, whatever? It's a very gray area. I'm not sure how much clout the league should have in that regard.
Rick, that might be true, but he might not have had
Yeah, you're right, Rick. Yeah, I didn't mean not cut, but no one wanted. Colin Kaepernick couldn't get a job back.
I don't think he had much of a choice there. But technically, Rick is correct.
Yeah.
All right. So a quandary and a question that probably doesn't have an easy solution. So let's get to one that might. Should there be a universal cutoff age for boxers?
No, I mean, should there be a universal cutoff age for football players? I mean, football players suffer similar head trauma. But
they don't get killed like boxers do. They don't die on the field like boxers do. I think there was one guy died in the NFL from a heart attack. I mean, that's why I'm asking the question, Jack. I understand you got a right to make a living. I understand all this good stuff. George Foreman became a champion, went into his 40s, understood. But for most boxers, that's why of course I want you being the expert. For most boxers, don't you think there should be a cutoff age because of possibly dying or the brain injury that comes with it?
Mac, a lot of boxers who die when they're in their 20s. So what are we going to do? Have 27 as an age cutoff when they have to retire? I mean, dementia is the big threat, and virtually every great fighter winds up with dementia. It's a sad thing. Everyone winds up getting damaged later on in life. They could have a long career. It might hit them at their 50s, 60s, 70s. Some guys, it hits them in their 80s. But, I mean, very few escape the physical punishment of their years in the ring. And fighters are fighting too long. The ringside physicians aren't doing their job. They're doing a very poor job, of safeguarding the fighters. And it pains me to say it because I know a lot of these guys. And I was, like I've said before, I was on the board of directors of the American Association of Professional Ringside Physicians for 10 years. And I'd be sitting in on meetings with the most prominent doctors. And, I don't doubt their sincerity and their efforts, but it's apparent they failed in their responsibilities. I mean, a fighter gets hit a lot. He comes back to the corner. The doctor tells the referee, keep a careful eye on him. The referee tells the corner to keep a careful eye on the fighter. And then the corner says to the fighter, do you want to continue? Do you want me to stop it? Of course, the fighter's going to say no in virtually every instance because he's going to be labeled a quitter otherwise. They're conditioned to want to go on. That's what happens all the time. And then the referee says, well, I wanted to give him every chance to be able to come back. So meanwhile, he's taking all this cumulative punishment, head snapping blows, because they want to give him a chance to score a very unlikely comeback victory, okay, when he's out of the fight. And the punishment adds up. And then he takes a CAT scan for his next fight. Oh, he's clear on the CAT scan. This stuff shows up 20, 30 years later. I mean, that's when it really starts showing up. And the people in the business are clueless with that. Yeah, Mac, it would be nice fighters in their 40s, for example. They're no longer allowed to fight. They have a cutoff age of 38. But we're having a super fight in boxing coming up soon. Errol Spence against Terence Crawford. Well, Terence Crawford's going to be 36. What's his cutoff age? I mean, he might establish himself as a superstar in this fight. I mean, he's a star right now as an absolute superstar. And imagine he does it. We tell him, okay, Terence, get all your fights in the next year because the mandatory retirement age is 37. What are we going to do? Start giving guys waivers on a mandatory retirement age? I mean, I don't think you can quite do that, have an exact age.
There was a exhibition fight that took place a number of years ago with an elderly fighter,
Yeah, I like
They're-
that.
He went against Mason the Line Dixon, as I recall. He was old, and he acquitted himself well. He had stuff in the basement, as I recall. He needed to get rid of and
Yeah, it
have
was a
one
tag
last fight.
sale. Tag sale the next week.
That's great. Yeah, well, even Balboa coming and seeing them talking about his rights. Wasn't Balboa showing signs of dementia after
Rocky
Boxing
IV?
Ivan?
Yeah,
There you go.
he had to go up against the commission in that last movie. They said you can't fight. He goes, "Don't I have rights? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
trying to pursue happiness, and you're taking away my chance to get happy."
Yes. Yeah,
What rights are you talking about, sir? the Bill of Rights.
I just don't think you can have an age, Mac. You mentioned the point. Dying isn't the issue. Fighters dying in the ring because it happens at younger ages. I mean, it happens even with amateurs once in a while. I think it's the dementia setting in. That's the good point. It happens all the time with fighters later on in their career. They fight too long. They take too many punches, and they don't realize when they're younger the effects that it has. I mean, because they're young. I mean, even in football, they get a headache and be sent back into the game years ago. Now we're more aware of what the situation is. But when you're young and you're an athlete, you don't think of the back end of life later on, how it could affect you in some way. You're just thinking of the here and now. And,
Sure.
All right, let's go to something a little lighter. This one here. I want you to think and share your favorite sports song of all time. What's your favorite sports song? I'll go first on this one so you guys don't trump me on it or beat me on it. Outside of all the music that goes along with the Rocky movies, I don't know if those are sports songs. If they are,
I thought about that this morning too, but go ahead, Doc.
But my favorite song about a sport is without a doubt, John Fogerty's Center Field. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play. Love it. I listen to it all the time, especially before I play a baseball game. That is, in my opinion, outside of the Rocky songs, the greatest sports song of all time. What do you guys think?
Good points. I mean, the Rocky ones are like music. I'm not sure whether it's a pure song to rate it. I'll go with Terry Cashman's I Like Baseball. I mean, it's
Talking baseball, Willie, Mickey, and the
baseball.
Duke.
I mean, the original song mentioning all the players, so many fun memories about all the icons of the game. To me, that's a favorite of mine.
See, you both fooled me. I thought Doc would say, "Take me out to the ball game." I thought Jack was going with Joltin' Joe DiMaggio. So
That's a pretty good one.
I'm sure Rick would say that Jack was around when that song was first composed.
Well, if the Jets win the Super Bowl and they have a song on Aaron Rodgers, that's going to take over number one for me.
Yeah, it'll be Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Hey, I'm going with Backfield in Motion. That covers a lot of sports. I mean, you guys have had to hear a Backfield in Motion.
Is that a sports song, Mac? Though?
Oh, it is. What do you mean it's not a sports song? Backfield in Motion. First down, caught you cheating on me, and you hit me below the belt. Yeah, that's boxing. That's a boxing, baseball, strike three, you're out. I mean, that is to me, it mentions a lot of sports. You can dance to it, and that's why I like it.
Rick makes an interesting point. He says the national anthem, if done right. Now, again, that's not necessarily a sports song, but it's a song that's played at sporting events. Right. So what do you like better as far as at the beginning of a game? I think it's pretty much always the Star Spangled Banner. But what do you like better? Star Spangled Banner at a ball game or God Bless America?
I like the God Bless America. To me, it's, a little more moving.
America the Beautiful. How about that?
He goes with a curveball. There's a lot of audibles being called.
I like Sinatra's, New York, and all that. At the end of a Yankee game when they win.
I like Ray Charles' version of America the Beautiful.
What about Meet the Mets? I mean, that's maybe better than any Yankee song.
The Yankee song was lame.
Yeah, better than any Yankee song. Yeah, But that was a fun song when the Mets were lovable losers and came into effect. It wasn't like a winning song, like, oh, we're all giddy, we're going to the game, we're meeting all these fun-loving characters.
I don't know about that, Jack.
Mets used to have a couple. I wouldn't even get into the lyrics, but someday go online and listen to the tagline for the Armour hot dogs, which used to advertise.
I love that.
I'm going to tell you, that's funny. I sometimes think if you could name it a franchise's greatest team, put it together on the field, but the criteria is they had to play one game at least. If they played one game for that franchise, you could slot the players in. Could you imagine the Mets, Yogi Berra, Willie Mays, Duke Snyder, Gil Hodges? I mean, that's pretty awesome when you think of it.
Darryl Strawberry, Doc. The Doc.
If you get every Mets player who ever played for the Mets, and you get that player in his greatest season, boy, oh boy, that'd be a heck of a team.
Yeah. I mean, think of it. I mean, you have Seaver, Nolan Ryan. I mean, who else came up? Mike Scott.
Frank Viola pitched for the Mets. Brett Saberhagen pitched for the Mets.
Yeah, their best.
But could you say that about any team? I mean, any
probably.
Team.
I'm going to tell you something about the Yankees, guys. The Yankees never had historically, they haven't had great starting pitching historically. When you look at it, they just haven't. They've been in business so long. Obviously, some great pitchers pitched for them, but they haven't had an overwhelmingly great pitching throughout their history compared to position players.
You're actually right about that. The Yankees have had very good to excellent starting pitchers when they've been great teams. There have been so many very, 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 very good pitchers who pitch for the Yankees. But as far as all-time greats, no. I mean, Whitey Ford would be considered the greatest Yankee pitcher. I don't think he probably comes in the top 25 of all-time pitchers when you start ranking pitchers. And you say now they had Roger Clemens, who some people claim is the greatest pitcher of all time, but that's not based upon his Yankee work. So you had Ron Guidry, who had a great year or a couple great years, one super exceptional year, but he's not a Hall of Famer. Yeah.
Sabathia, Mussina, great pitchers. Sabathia will be in the Hall of Fame, I believe, someday.
But Mussina wasn't really a Yankee; he was an Oriole, right? More than
about the same. But he put up numbers, but was he especially great? And we began the discussion again offline, talking about the Hall of Fame. And I mentioned that even the Yankees are having trouble figuring this out. They have Monument Park, and we won't get into the whole thing. But to wrap up the show and to bring it full circle, the Yankees do have a pitcher named Allie Reynolds who's in Monument Park. Well-deserved, a great, great, great pitcher. But Allie Reynolds was part of the big three who helped the Yankees win those World Series in the late 40s and early 50s. Allie Reynolds was part of a trio with Vic Raschi and Ed Lopat. Both those guys aren't out there. And none of the three, as very good as they were and as dominant as they were for a period of time, none of those three are in the Hall of Fame. So I think you make a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about position players like Roy White, Greg Nettles. They belong in Monument Park. Sparky Lyle.
I think there's a space in a place like Monument Park, and you're talking about this with team Hall of Fames earlier, like Howard Johnson, etc. I think there's a place for Sparky Lyle out there. The Yankees probably don't win in fact, they don't win the 77 World Series or the pennant without Sparky Lyle. He won the Cy Young Award. And then in that one playoff game, he pitched I think that Billy Martin brought him in like the third inning, and he pitched the whole rest of the way. You don't use closers like that anymore today, but that was Sparky. And of course, after this great year, Greg Nettles made that quote when the Yankees signed Rich Gossage. Sparky Lyle went from Cy Young to Sayonara. Right?
Is Goose Gossage in Monument Park?
I think Goose Gossage is in Monument Park.
I don't think he should have gotten in ahead of Sparky Lyle. That's just my opinion. Billy Martin, is he in Monument Park?
Billy Martin is in Monument Park.
Yeah, okay.
And his number's retired. And I don't think that he deserves either of those things over so many other qualified people.
Isn't Sparky Lyle remember more as a Cincinnati Red?
No, you're thinking Boston Red Sox before. No, Sparky Lyle started as a Yankee. He came to the Yankees. The Yankees traded an infielder, Danny Cater, for Sparky Lyle. So that was a bit of a steal. It turned out to be a great deal for the Yankees. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the Yankees' greatest deals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just checking to see if Gossage is in there. I'm
Frank
90.
Frassetti's in there, I'm sure, right?
No, that's and again in the article I wrote
Wow.
the other day.
Oh.
The other day I wrote that no Yankee has more rings, not even Yogi, than Frank
Wow.
Rossetti. He was a Yankee shortstop. He was the glue to the infield throughout
Wow.
the 30s and into the 40s until Phil Rizzuto basically becomes the next great Yankee shortstop. And then he coached on the Yankees throughout like the 19th.
Just as a coach, he belongs in just as a coach.
Correct. I don't think anybody's ever coached the Yankees as long as Frank Rossetti. He has like 12 World Series or 15 World Series rings. How is that person not recognized by the franchise as somebody who's deserving of that honor? That's my point. Goose Gossage is in there.
Wow.
So, but then you get like a guy like Dave Righetti, right? He was a top relief pitcher. Now, the Yankees never won anything with Righetti there, but threw a no-hitter.
I can't say Dave Righetti. I would consider him. Don't get me wrong, but there are guys that belong in ahead of him.
Oh, I'm not doubting that, but I'm saying like you just start to talk about guys who the team hasn't really ever recognized. And
Hank Bauer's not in, Frank Frassetti's not. We should compile a list of the guys who are not in, who is the most worthy, who should go in first. Like,
and what are we going to do with that list? We should send that list to Hal Steinbrenner. Is that what we do with that list?
The Yankees need to fix the problem with Monument Park because there's a lot of I've made this point. It's in my book, The Least Among Them. They don't have any third baseman in Monument Park. There's not a third baseman at all in Monument Park. How is Craig Nettles not there, or A-Rod, or Frank Home Run Baker, or Clete Boyer? I mean, the Yankees have had enough high-quality third basemen over the years. Red Rolfe. I mean, it should be Nettles. He's my favorite player, of course. But and they don't have any left fielders. Babe Ruth played some left field, but there's not a guy who played his majority of his career in left field, except for Babe Ruth, who basically was 50-50 as a Yankee.
Dave Winfield, guys, he's not in Monument Park.
He's not in Monument Park. How is Dave Winfield not in Monument Park? But they don't have any left fielders. And Roy White's, we just talked about this before, 11th in all-time WAR in Yankees history. 11th.
I'm going to tell you
and he's not
something,
in Monument
guys.
Park.
I'm making a prediction who will go. Matsui's not in Monument Park, is he?
He is not.
A prediction, because Matsui's more current, he would get in ahead of Roy White. I think Roy White should get in ahead of Matsui, but that's just my feeling, the mentality of today.
No, unfortunately, it's what have you done lately? And we live in a society where we forget those people. But that's the point. My bigger point, and we'll wrap it up with this, is that's the point of having a place like Monument Park. We all know what's happening around us right now. A place like Monument Park is there to recognize the heroes from before and give them a chance to be remembered. Because if you're going to remember some, if you're not in there, then you're going to be forgotten. And so he needs to be one of those guys who's remembered. Rick, thank you so much. Good show. He tells us, see you tomorrow. You won't see me tomorrow, of course, but you'll see the great Mac and Jack. They'll be right back here tomorrow. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Always great sports talks. Always great being with you. And have yourselves a wonderful, fantastic, and terrific Saturday.
Take care, folks. See you tomorrow.